Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to use the June Taylor pre-printed fusible fleece that makes this adorable pet placemat for your dog. I have 2 dogs. We love our pets here at Shabby Fabrics, and it's fun to be able to have projects that are just for them. Their food bowl, their water bowl. We have one for the cat. We already have that video, and now this is the dog one. When you get the June Taylor kit, and we have this available in these exact fabrics, or you can buy just the pre-printed fusible fleece and you can choose your own fabric, so that's an option. When you receive that, when you take it out of the package, this is what it looks like. You have the outline of the bone and you have these different sections with numbers, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Because this is fusible on this side, you will be ironing that to the back of whatever you want for the back of your mat. Because this is fusible, whatever you iron that to, it basically is going to be in contact with that fabric, and I don't really want to waste that much backing fabric. So the first thing I do whenever I am using the June Taylor fusible fleece or fusible or batting projects, printed batting projects I should say, is I like to roughly cut around that so that I'm not wasting fabric, because once you iron this fusible fleece down to whatever fabric it is, you've committed that fabric. You're not going to be able to take that off and really use that for anything else. And that's a lot of fabric you'd be throwing away, which I don't want to do. So I roughly cut around. I'm using the Clover Bordeaux 200 scissors. This is a 7 3/4 inch scissor. I love how sharp they are. They're made in Japan, and they're just sharp and wonderful. They feel good in your hands. They're good for left and right-handed people, which I love that. I know left-handed people often feel like it's a right-handed person's world. My husband's a lefty, and he says that all the time. And I love how Clover really designed these to be used equally as well with left and right-handed people. So thank you very much, Clover, for having that consideration. Once you have that roughly cut out, whatever backing fabric you'll be using, if you're getting our kit, this will be your backing fabric. You'll iron that down and you'll go ahead and cut exactly on the line. Now what we've done here, I'll show you what this looks like right now. That's what that looks like. And this is where you'll go ahead and cut exactly on the lines. And I love having a beefier pair of scissors. I love my small Kais, and they're great for smaller projects, clipping threads, but for a bigger project like this, I like having a bigger pair of scissors. I can just take a longer bite at the project. Now, one of the things that I asked right away is, do I need to cut this part out now? The answer is yes. And the reason is, as you sew the strips down to the fusible fleece, you will end up covering up the lines that define the shape of the bone. And if you don't have this portion already cut out for you, you wouldn't know how to trim your fabrics. And that might not make sense right now, but as we work through the project, you'll see what I mean, how you really do need to cut this out at this time before you start sewing the strips down. The other thing I like about this pair of scissors, because the point is so sharp, they're so sharp, is they come with I think it's leather. I'll show you that. It's kind of protects the tip here, this portion. I love that. So they're safe. So plus, you know, if you're going to be putting it in a bag, you're not poking through the side of your bag with your scissors. So they really thought through all of that, and that comes with your scissors. So let's put our project out in front of us so we're reminded of what are we doing with this thing. I think the overhead camera can see the numbering here. In fact, let me turn that around like this. So that's number 1, piece 2 and 3. In June Taylor's projects, consistently, instead of building from left to right, they start typically in the center, and then you kind of build in opposites, 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7. You kind of do this teeter-totter thing, and you kind of balance out the project until it's completely done, and then you add your binding. So as you would suspect, the instructions will guide you into cutting out whatever your center fabric is and simply placing that into position. Now piece number 2 and all the way around are our puppy paws. And you're going to want to make sure, that's my shape right there. That's how I know where that's going to be. And what I do with triangles like this is I just make sure that I have an equal amount on both sides. See how I have more here? I'm just going to scoot that until it's equidistant. I have the same amount overlapping on each end. Then I'm going to add a pin, and we're going to take that to the sewing machine. Add a couple pins. And let's take that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'll be using the 57D today. And I'll also be using, this is the dual feed system. What I love about that with the Bernina is it acts as, it's a walking foot. My feed dogs are active above and below, so it feeds the project through evenly, which I love, especially on a project with fusible fleece or fusible batting. Now, here's something else I want to point out. I should have actually, let me actually point this out before I bring it to the sewing machine. Because you have this other section, I want to make sure you don't start sewing beyond this blue line right here. That's your boundary. You really do not want to and should not start that, because now you'll be in this next section. So you'll make sure you start at the blue line, and of course you can go off the edge here. But that's going to be true of when you start here and work this way, that you're going to start at that blue line but don't go beyond, and that'll be true of each section. So let's go back to the machine and let's get going. Let me make sure that's right where I want it to be. I'm going to go needle down just to check my position. Yep, and let's go with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, one thing that June Taylor recommends with her fusible fleece pre-printed and as well as her batting projects is to, at this point, not iron anything further. You've obviously ironed it down to the background, but if you do a whole lot of ironing in a particular section, you might distort this. So at this point, we like to use the roll and press. We're going to definitely press to the outside. This is a way to get that seam nice and flat without heat. So it's just another way to get a seam down without heat. Now you're going to repeat the steps. You're going to actually go with the opposite. Same thing, making sure you check equidistant, and you'll put in all 4 sides. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with the next step. So I have the center section of my dog placemat, and now let's look at the sides. So this is piece 6 and 7, and as you would suspect, I'm going to be lining that up, right sides together, making sure I have the equal amount of overlap, pressing to the outside, doing the same here, and then here come my other strips. This is piece, let's see, we have 8 and 9. So you have your strips here that you're going to sew right sides together and flip. Same here, and they have you do 10, 11, so they're having you finish up this whole side just like before, you know, lining that up, figuring out where you want it to be, flip it to the outside, and we'll repeat that. So I have that prepared ahead of time, so let me get that out. So I've put all my pieces on, and this is what it looks like. Now you can realize why it was important that we cut out the shape of the bone beforehand, so that now we can go back with our sharp pair of clover or whatever scissors you may have, and we're going to go ahead and cut away the excess fabric using the bone shape, of course, as our template. So we're going to just continue to cut all the way around this shape so that in the very, very end it's going to look like the bone. And then you'll add a binding, and you want to make sure you're using a bias binding. Because you are going around some curves, the bias binding is going to give you the stretch that you need. If you're not familiar with A great technique for binding. Tammy showed me her favorite technique. I call it the magic binding technique because it does appear to be magic. I can't see where it begins and ends, and somehow it all works. So that video will be available at the end of this one, and I hope you enjoyed learning how fun it is and how easy it is to use the June Taylor projects, and in this case to make the pet placemat.